Welcome, Wargamers. This is Doug with 2 Plus Tough. Today we are going to be reviewing the Allegiance abilities for the Dispossessed in the General's Handbook 2017. This video was requested by Oscar Esederson, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And if you would like to determine what comes next, go ahead, click subscribe, and leave it in the comments down below. I use all of your comments for inspiration for videos. I read them all, try to respond to as many as possible. So without further ado, let's dig in. Okay. So the Dispossessed are what used to be the vast majority of the dwarf models from Warhammer Fantasy Battles back when it was the other game. I don't think a lot of us saw this rule set coming. I think for a lot of these races, much like the Free Peoples, we were kind of in limbo about what they were going to do, if they were going to expand the range, not delete it, but just kind of reimagine it. Instead, what they did with a few of these factions in the 2017 book is basically reimagine the Warhammer Fantasy Battle armies in Age of Sigmar, meaning they got a lot more flavor, but they kind of kept the same lore elements. In the Dispossessed, the dwarf's case, it's a lot of grudges and things like that. So we'll dig into that kind of lore aspect and how it compares in just a minute. If you're not familiar, kind of the lore behind the what used to be dwarves, now are dwarven, I'm going to try to keep myself to that. Was that they were subterranean, they lived in mining colonies underground. They had the height of their empire long ago, but have been in steady decline ever since, say, the Dark Elves kind of came to being. And Skaven and Goblins have all kind of invaded and tried to take over their land, their mountains. So they're kind of on the declining end towards the end of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Now, what makes them distinct in that universe is kind of this honor code that they had. They were very honorable in their dealings and in giving the benefit of a doubt. A lot of the, if you read, I believe it was the High Elf, Dark Elf lore series, but when that split happened, I can't remember what it's called, but basically the Malekith interacts with the Duarden, what are then called dwarves, and they're just a very noble people who invited him in and gave him a shot, and then he kind of backfired everything, and that's what caused the chasm and all this kind of stuff. So they're a very good, noble race. They are good guys. They're all about order. They seem to interact at least somewhat well with other respectable races and things like that. That's really awesome. One of the keynotes of their society is the grudge system. So if you have a grudge against somebody, you write it down in this huge book of grudges, and this is basically a tally of all of the ways we have to get back at people, right? If someone wrongs you, you need to right that wrong. There's heavy themes of justice, of kind of singling out enemies, of, you know, honor-bound pledges to destroy an enemy, right? If this guy attacks a faraway village and then collectively the Duarden race holds a grudge against that bad guy, any of the Duarden who see him will instantly go attack him because they are oath-bound as a society to do so. What it did was it added a lot of depth to the characters, gave them cool, interesting reasons to be at weird places and weird times because they're fulfilling these promises that could have been made for any number of reasons. In addition to that, they were also one of the most technologically advanced races in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, using steam technology, firearms, gunpowder, things like that to get the job done. So the question we're asking today is, how does that translate into Age of Sigmar? Well, they really have two major rules. In order, those are stubborn to the end and grudge bound. So we're going to kind of dissect them individually, and then we'll kind of go one by one. Stubborn to the end is a fascinating ability, and I'm going to preface this with any time an army uses or modifies a core mechanic of the game, you should really pay attention to it. So in this case, it is Battle Shock. Any part of the Dispossessed army, if that's your allegiance ability, when you take a Battle Shock on a 1, 2, or 3, nobody runs away. It doesn't matter if you lost 20 dudes, it doesn't matter if you lost 1. On a 1, 2, or 3 of that die roll for Battle Shock, nobody leaves. Now, of course, on a 4, 5, or 6, you would calculate the damage, and my assumption is the narrative behind there is that on a 4, 5, or 6, the losses are just too big for kind of their mind to handle, and so they kind of forget their oaths. But that idea that you always have a 50% chance of being immune to this base rule of the game that affects everybody is really, really cool. Now, they don't have a ton of incredibly low bravery models, but what it does is it kind of frees you up to have some, I don't know, recklessness almost in a way with how you throw your hordes at people. Now, the second universal rule for this army is called Grudge Bound, and that's kind of plays a lot more into the theme that I was talking about earlier with honor and grudges and things like that. And basically how it works is, after you're done setting up, before you choose a command trait, what you do is you either roll or you choose a grudge. This is basically an army-wide ability, so any kind of dispossessed in your army, you're going to have this. And really what it is, it's thematically the leader of your army saying, choosing the enemy and saying, we have a grudge against blank, and you get a bonus based on what your grudge is against. Now, functionally, all the bonuses are exactly the same. They are all reroll hit rolls of 1 against blank. Blank can be a number of things, so I'm just going to briefly run down real quick. I'm just going to read right here. I know it's not really good video, but you can get rerolls hit against enemy heroes, anything with a move characteristic of 10 or more, so you really hate fast people. You get reroll hit ones against monsters. If you attack a unit that started the game with 20 or more models, so hordes, so thematically that's Skaven goblins are the ones they really, really hate. If the unit has a save value of 4 up or better, so anything that's heavy armored, they get to reroll hit rolls of 1 against. And the last one is any unit that didn't start on the battlefield, so summoned things, the Stormcaster like strike down, anything that like starts off the board and then is brought on later on, they get reroll hit rolls of 1 against. So thematically you can choose what your enemy is like and then kind of base like what your grudge is against from there. Keep in mind this does affect the entire army, and it is just hit rolls. It doesn't say in the combat phase, in the shooting phase, it's just reroll hit rolls of 1 against blank. So it does have a lot of versatility there, because either A, you can double down and say, okay, I have a heavy armored bunch of Dwarden, and I'm going to choose the one that says 4 up or better save, right? So now you're doing better against hitting harder targets. You're kind of doubling down, right? I have a lot of armor, and I want to do better against people who have other types of armor. You could also use it to fill in weaknesses, meaning, say, you're kind of an elite model army, you need every hit to count, so if you're taking it against a horde, you're going to want that horde one, right? Because you want everything that you do to have the most benefit for your army. What I really like, though, is that it's not a massive thing, right? This is not game swinging, this is just a little something to add A, flavor, and B, versatility to your army. I think those are the best kinds of abilities, the ones that add to the game without being so overwhelming that they define the game. Next, I want to move into the command traits. Now, just so it's not me sitting here reading and things like that, I'm going to show some art and stuff like that of the Dispossessed to kind of get you pumped for it. We're going to review each of the command abilities, or command traits, I'm sorry, and just kind of a brief idea of how they can be used. Resolute. Friendly Dispossessed units in 6 inches of the general automatically pass battle shock tests on a 1 to 4 rather than a 1 to 3. This is actually incredible. So what you're doing is doubling down on the stubborn to the end rule. So now you have a 2/3 chance of never even having to worry about battle shock. An entire phase of the game is just taken care of for you. Resilient, add 1 to the general's wound characteristic. Depends on what your general is, but that's generally a good thing. If you really can't think of anything else to take, why not? Unforgiving, add 1 to the wound roll of the general if the target has the chaos keyword. It's a little too specific for my tastes, but I understand if it's a thematic game. Siege Master, do not add 1 to save rolls for enemy units that are in cover if they are attacked by the general or a friendly dispossessed unit within 6 inches of the general. That's okay. The way terrain rules work in this edition, it doesn't stand out as being amazing. However, if your enemy is, say, like Sylvaneth or something like that, or Wanderers or some other unit that gets a lot of value from being in cover specifically, that is going to make a difference. Battle Fury. Roll a dice. After the general completes their attacks in the combat phase, on a roll of 6, they can pile in and attack again. I'm not personally a huge fan of random kind of command traits. I like either static buffs or aura abilities. If you have a super melee-centric hero, general in particular, sure, you can do this, but I don't see a lot of value in it. Grudge Bearer. Once per battle in your hero phase, you can pick a new grudge, see the Grudge Bound special rule, and it applies to the army for the rest of the battle. And this one is really great. So I think Grudge Bearer and Resolute, because they double down on your already existing allegiance abilities, are going to be the keys. Either saying, I don't want to worry about battle shock because you're taking large hordes, or saying, I want my army to have the versatility with how they hit, and so taking the ability to switch. So say you are playing Skaven and you're fighting a bunch of hordes, you want to start off the game re-rolling hit rolls of 1 against units with 20 or more models, and then as the game progresses towards the end and you've cleared out a lot of chaff and now you're getting to the meat, those heroes behind, you can switch it to be stuck up grudge, which means you re-roll hit rolls against heroes. So that has a lot of versatility to it. I think either, like I said, Grudge Bearer or Resolute are going to be the keys to this army's command traits. I want to pause right here in the middle of the video and just kind of give a quick shout out. I do have gaming mats available for sale. Me and a buddy, we got together, we designed our own kind of Realm of Death custom layout, and you can get it by clicking the link down below. There is a coupon code which you can get by following the link down there, and so we can have that shipped to you. It's only to the United States, unfortunately, right now, just because international shipping is insane. US and Canada, I believe we can do right now. So go ahead and check it out. It means so much to me to have your support. So now we're going to dive into the artifacts, and just like with the command traits, I'm going to show you some art so it's not so stagnant, but we're going to review each item and come up with a few ideas of how to use them. Heavy Metal Ignot. You can reroll failed save rolls for this model as long as it did not move in the same turn. That's okay, especially if you have a very static hero who's going to be buffing people near him. That's not a bad choice. Ancestral Pickaxe. Once during the battle in your hero phase, you can remove this model and up to one other friendly dispossessed unit in 3 inches at the start of the battlefield. They are set up again. Basically, it's a deployment mechanism. You're set up again more than 9 inches away from an enemy. The hero who has this and the unit have to be within 3 inches of each other, and that counts as their movement for the turn. Now, this is a colossal deal because you're taking a very unmobile army and making them very mobile, at least for one hero, one unit. If you give it to the right guy and put him next to a horde of whatever you want, it doesn't really matter. This is going to be really nasty for your opponent to deal with. Keep in mind that this could stack, say you had a, I don't know, just any hero, right? You give any hero this artifact, have him teleport with a unit of 40 of the basic Dwarden behind the enemy line. Even though they are so far away from the rest of your army, they still benefit from the stubborn to the end rule. So you can plop a horde that is almost immune to battle shock down behind the enemy lines. Teardrop of Grugny. You can use this artifact once per battle in your shooting phase. When you do so, pick an enemy unit within 6 inches of the model. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, if it's a hero or monster, you have its movement characteristic until your next hero phase. This one's okay. I'm not really a huge fan of artifacts that are just kind of an extra attack, especially ones that are just once per battle. They seem to have like limited effectiveness, so it's okay. I mean, Ancestral Pickaxe is just such a shining winner in this. It's hard to give a lot of credence to a once per game D3 mortal wound shot, especially because you can bring so many wounds to bear in this army. Grudge Rune. After armies have been set up, but before the first battle round starts, pick one hero in the enemy army. You can re-roll failed hit and wound rolls for this model if the target of the attack is the chosen enemy hero. So basically just pick a dude, and whoever has this artifact gets to re-roll hit and wound rolls against it. I see limited value in this because the second you declare that to your opponent, you know they are not going to let that hero get near this model. So, if you want to use it strategically, like as a, trying to like tilt your opponent or get them to move a certain way or scare them into something, sure. But I don't see a whole ton of value in it. Pile Driver Gauntlets. At the start of the combat phase, you can declare that this model will strike the ground instead of attacking. If you do so, your opponent must subtract 1 from hit rolls made for enemy models that are within 6 inches of this model when they attack. So if you had a horde of just basic guys with axes and junk thrown into the enemy, you can make them more effective and stay alive longer simply by having a hero with this nearby smashing the ground so that your horde chaff unit is not being dissolved nearly as quickly. Again, all of these things stack with Stubborn to the end, making them more resilient as large bodies of models. Resounding Gromrelhorn. The bearer can use this artifact once per battle in hero phase. When they do so, all friendly dispossessed units add 2 to their bravery until your next hero phase. Another one that benefits large hordes of models, especially when they're going to be losing things. If you're going to go with an artifact, it's okay. I don't have anything against it. If you're not planning on relying so much on Stubborn to the end, it's definitely a good choice. If you only get one artifact in your army, I think the clear winner here is the Ancestral Pickaxe, being able to move a huge unit, no matter what size it is really, across the battlefield with a hero to support it. It can be a massive distraction to your enemy, it can put them on tilt, and it can really, really ruin their day. So kind of moving away from the particulars of the allegiance abilities that were added and talking about the army in general, what you're looking at here, if you wanted to stick pure Dispossessed, so in a 2,000 point game, 1,600 points of Dispossessed, you can take 400 points of allies without losing this. What you're seeing is this is definitely a horde army. You can have, even if you had 2 large blocks of warriors, you can deploy them. You can then psych your enemy out by throwing them one of those huge things behind the enemy lines with the Ancestral Pickaxe. You have a lot of guns, a lot of dudes. Battle Shock, here's the biggest thing, right? A lot of armies can run hordes. Skaven and Goblins, I think, do it the best. But the truth of the matter is that in terms of their hordes are different with kind of the lower quality troops, whereas these guys can be hordes with higher quality troops and stubborn to the end. I can't stress that enough, how incredibly valuable that is. And yes, you are going to lose guys to Battle Shock because you're going to roll a 4, 5, or 6, or a 5 or 6, depending on if you have the general with that command trait. But overall, in terms of the entire battle's attrition, if you are fighting Horde Dispossessed versus Horde Skaven, you are going to nudge them out, right? Straight math is on your side that says that you're going to have units that some rounds are not going to lose anything, whereas they are consistently going to be losing them. Keep in mind, if you have a unit that you really truly need to stay alive, you're just Inspiring Presence, right? It's still there. All those things are still options. This is just more stuff on top of that. As far as kind of putting things together, again, I really think you're going to see a lot of chaff units like warriors, followed up by some extremely synergized, kind of more elite soldiers. Now keep in mind, almost all of your troop choices in this army have gained something from the the massive regiments rules, and so they get points decreases. So you're going to see more Dwarden on the battlefield, more Dispossessed guys. That's more dudes to benefit from the Battle Shock bonuses. That's more dudes getting reroll hit rolls of 1 for whatever. So I think it's definitely a horde army. Artillery to support it would definitely be a great thing, but you're going to see just a lot of just Dwarden doing what they do. If you're looking to start this army, there's few better places than finding a old Battle for Skull Pass set online. They're relatively cheap because they made a ton of dwarves back when they were dwarves in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. But Dwarden are really, really cheap relatively to get compared to, say, like a Stormcast army or something like that. So it is definitely doable, and so I want to keep that in mind. This is actually a really great beginner army because you're ignoring some basic phases of the game with Battle Shock and stuff like that. All of the stat lines and stuff are very, very easy and straightforward to understand. You have a lot of models to paint, unfortunately, which is kind of a barrier for a lot of new players, but they look great doing what they do. You do have a battalion here called the Grudgebound War Throng. I don't really cover battalions because not everyone uses them, not everyone likes them, a lot of tournaments don't allow some and stuff like that, but you do have abilities and options to get more artifacts and things like that. All in all, it's an army that I don't know what I would do against if I saw a full-blown Dispossessed army where someone doubled down on it, because I play Stormcast Eternals, so if they just take the grudge that says 4 up, they get rerolls, hit rolls against units that have a 4 or better for their armor save. I'm kind of hosed. Every single thing in my army has a 4 or better, and so they get an entire bonus against my entire army. In addition to that, there's so many of them, right? There's so many of them with massive regiments and not losing as much on Battle Shock over the course of the game. There's a lot going on with this army, and I can't stress enough how cool it is. So guys and gals, that is my coverage of the Dispossessed. I really hope you enjoyed it. Oscar in particular, you got what you wanted. If you would like to request a video, go ahead and leave it in the comments down below after clicking subscribe, and share it with a friend, okay? That's the kind of the theme I want to get out to you, is support the channel by sharing these things with friends. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for your time today, and happy wargaming.